Royalty Live, the official podcast of hockeyroyalty.com. It's the first episode of 2023, so we're talking about Happy New Year's. We're talking about Edler's 1,000 games, the World Junior Championships, midseason reviews, and some trade rumors for you guys. So get in the chat, like and subscribe, and let's go. All right, guys. Well, welcome in, man. The chat is already buzzing. We got Carter Scores in here. I'm here, Randon. You ain't got to tell me. We got Happy New Year from CJ. We got Happy New Year from Carter. The guys are ready to roll, man. They're ready for the first episode of 2023. I'm ready for the first episode of 2023. How you fellas doing?
Let's go.
Yeah, I'm doing good. The World Juniors are kicking off. Yeah, the Kings are playing. It's a good time to be a hockey fan. That's for sure.
Well, bringing in the new year, guys. Happy New Year's to you both, since it hasn't really been said there. New Year's is usually, some New Year's resolutions. So what are maybe some resolutions or maybe small things you want to change this year? And then maybe one small thing you want to change with a Kings player or just the Kings in general? We'll start with Russ.
Ooh, New Year's resolution for the Kings. I don't really have, man, I think a lot of it pertains maybe to the trade deadline. I'd like to see Rob Blake maybe get a little active, right? This team's looking pretty good, so maybe some upgrades could be on the horizon come deadline time. But as far as for me, I was talking about maybe listening to like some new music. I'm a big Spotify guy, so I always they have a playlist that's like Discover Weekly, which just plays a bunch of new music from artists you never really heard of. So I used to get really into that and find other artists, and then once you go down that rabbit hole of learning all of their albums and listening, it becomes really cool because then you get to learn a new artist that you never heard of before. So I'm going to try to do that a little bit more this year.
I saw that they have that's a good goal. I saw that they have a new feature sometimes for certain playlists called Enhance. Well, they'll take the playlist that you created and enhance it by throwing in bands that maybe you haven't liked yet that are similar to that. So I saw that being a pretty cool feature. I like it there. Wanting Blakey to be more aggressive as a New Year resolution. Joe, where are you at, my man?
I would say I've never been a big resolution guy, but I'll say this year I've told myself, life's busy. I've got two little ones, busy family, wife, a lot of stuff going on at home. I have a day job. I do the things for Hockey Royalty. I coach a hockey team. So what I've tried to do is I'm 0 for 4, by the way. We're January 4th. We're 4 days in. I'm 0 for 4. But what I want to try to do and make a point of is even if it's just 15, 30 minutes, just set aside some time during the day for just me. Put everything away, whether it's, read a book, do something active, work out, go for a walk, just something for, even if it's a short amount of time, just take a little time to kind of reset. Because I truthfully don't think I do enough of that. And, things just happen so fast so we'll see. That's my goal. Like I said, not off to a great start, but that's my goal.
Some Joe time. Joe time. That's all we're having.
Joey Pads getting some time in for himself, huh? So yeah. Where's your Kings, either a Kings one or for a player on the Kings, where's the resolution for that?
Mine is a Kings organization one, and this is just for a happy, but most importantly, a healthy Alex Turcotte for the remainder of 2023. That's what I would like to see. That's what I want to wish for. If there's one person in the Kings organization, it would be Alex Turcotte. I was going to say, leading into the new year, Todd McClellan to get a save, but he's got that with Phoenix Copley, so we don't have to worry about that.
Oh man. So yeah, I've had a couple. I decided to go a one major one and a couple small ones. I'm trying to lose some LBs here, just like Carter's in here, to be active outside of work. Down 17 pounds to September, man. Congratulations. So my goal is to be down 30 by June and then keep it off through December. So my biggest detriment is football season. I'm out all day Sunday drinking them beers, eating bad. So it's just something to take care of. And then I want to do 5 to 10 minutes of learning a language and 5 to 10 minutes of reading, 5 days a week. So
there you go.
I'm going to try to do
Nice.
the reading audio books on the way home from work, and then on my lunch break, do some learning a new language. So, yeah, just try a little something small, something easy, something attainable to build confidence on. And is building confidence on my New Year's resolution is the same as Carter's here, but maybe not as mean there. But Quentin Byfield, my New Year's resolution is for him to put up and put up some numbers and show that he can be a number 2 overall pick, or he was worthy of that pick, and see some real progression. Whether it's been injury, whether it's been illness or COVID, or him being young, or them choosing to put him in the AHL. I'm tired of the excuses, and I want to see the progression. And I'm rooting for the kid. This is the first step, was him playing on the first line. We'll get into that going forward, but I want to see him start building on that, and maybe get dropped back down to the third line and be the driver of that line, be the Deneau of that line, and where he's really driving force, and to where he can be that force, like we talked about last week in the playoffs when we get into 7-game series, or take over for a period, and he's the reason we win a game. And so, I'd like to see that from him, and see more consistent flashes. And I think that's my New Year's resolution for the Kings there.
I like it.
Sounds good to me.
So resolution for the World Junior Championships, a lot of teams trying to get some medals there. We finished the semifinals where the Czech team played Sweden. They ended up winning 2-1 in overtime. David Hirchek, the hero of that game. If you guys didn't read my article on him last year, I thought he would have been the unsung hero draft pick for the Kings if he would have fell, right? I thought he was going to fall a little bit farther with injury, but we ended up getting a pretty good consolation prize in Kevin Fiala for that pick. So not too hurt on that. And then the second game had 2 Kings prospects in it with the 6-2 final, Canada over the United States, even though United States was up 2-1 in the first. I was at work, so I was unlucky enough to watch both of these. I know you guys were tweeting back and forth in our group chat. Let's just throw open forum. Where do you guys want to start with this one? Let's start with the Czech game, and what do you guys see from those teams, and maybe some young stars to watch out for in the NHL in years to come?
I watched actually pretty much the whole entire Czech game, Czech-Sweden. I thought, David Hirchek, he's a stud. Randy, we were talking about this before we hopped on here. He looks like a veteran NHL player when you watch him play. He even looks like an older guy than what he is. And he's so poised on the ice. And Sweden had an early lead. They were up 1-0 pretty much throughout the game. And the third period, they just decided to be so passive. I was watching it, and I'm thinking to myself, like, man, Sweden is just welcoming Czech Republic or Czechia to tie the game at any point. And sure enough, 38 seconds left. That's exactly what happened. And I believe it was Hirchek that tied the game, and they ended up winning in overtime too. So there'll be a force for Canada in the final. They're a really fun team to watch. That's for sure.
Yeah, you got Hirchek, first-round pick. You got Gabriel Stachek, or David Spacek, and Yuri Kulich. A lot of high picks for that Czech team. Interesting to see how the World Championship team and the Olympic team starts to these young stars coming up through the ranks, and how they'll kind of compete on that level. Joe, did you get to watch any part of that game? And
I did miss the entire Czech game, but I know, just piggybacking a little bit off of Russ with Juracek, and again, I whenever I see his name or bring him up, I have to give stick taps to Randon. He was the one that turned me on to him a while ago when you wrote that article, and he's really evolving into a heck of a prospect. He's had a hell of a tournament. He could be one of the best players in this tournament if it wasn't for Connor Bedard. I know, and Yuri Kulich, he's had a hell of a tournament, and the Sabres, who have got a stockpile of prospects now, have another exciting one that can fire the puck. So they're a good-looking team, and it doesn't get much better than a Czech Canada final, given how this tournament started.
Yeah, Kulich, I think, was shot of the draft. Like, he had the best shot in last year's draft, or best release.
One of them,
and so, is definitely a good shooter, and he's a prospect to work out for. But where the Kings fans have the most interest, we have the United States and the Canada game with my boy Brant Clark throwing down a goal today, and then Kenny Connors as well, another prospect for the Kings. Russ, get into this game here. Like, I mean, obviously the first period starts out great for the United States. They set the tone, get 2 goals out of the gate. Top 3 pick and loathing. Cooley gets it started for the red, white, and blue. how did this game kind of look to you going in?
Well, the first period, U.S. dominated pretty much. I thought, like, it didn't even look like Canada should have belonged on the rink with them. That's how good they were playing. They were offensive zone for U.S. the entire frame. But I believe it was 2-1. Was it 2-1 going into the second, Joe?
Yep.
Or
yes.
Yeah. So 2-1 going into the second. Canada got one back. Kenny Connors scores, which is he's looked pretty good this entire tournament. He skates really well. They show a lot of trust in him too. He plays on the power play. So I'm really excited to see what Kenny Connors can kind of develop into as to a player. But then the second period just kind of got away from the U.S. There was some, I guess there were controversial goaltender interference calls. The first one, I can see where people can where it raises a little eyebrows. Apparently the IHF rules are a little bit, or I guess a lot more strict than the NHL rules. So I believe it was Jackson Blake who got caught, who was turning around in the crease and caught the Canada goaltender and maybe bumped him a little bit. And so they ruled it was a goal on the ice, but then video review, then they overturned it. So that one I can see there being a little bit of controversy. The second goaltender interference was, to me, it was clear as day. I'm watching that. I'm like, okay, that's for sure going to be goaltender interference. And I don't know why the NHL Network announcers were so like they were talking about like, oh, we're going to have a referee summit over this. I'm like, all right, dude, relax. Like that's the Canada goalie clearly had the puck underneath his pad. You can say, yeah, the U.S. player is fighting until he hears a whistle, which I totally get. That's exactly what he should be doing. But if you look at the video, the puck is not loose. It's clearly under the pad. And just because there's no whistle doesn't mean that it gives every right for any U.S. player just to push the goalie's pad out of the way and push the puck into the net. So they overturned that one. And that seemed to be kind of the turning point of the entire game. And Canada just ended up running away with it.
Yeah, I actually think the rule's in a lot of ways, it's a lot more clear than the NHL. It is more strict, as you said, Russ. I mean, I'm reading it right now. 69.1 of the IIHF rulebook is goals should be disallowed if an attacking player, either by positioning, so when thinking of that first goal, or by relevant contact, impairs the goalkeeper's ability to move freely within the goal crease or defend their goal. Those are both no goals. I mean, it's actually pretty cut in your eye. So yeah, I don't know. Seeing them live, you thought they were goals, but then obviously when you see the replays and you read the rule after the fact, I guess you can understand why they called them that way. Yeah, it's another Canada-US game that was just chaos for a little while there. Tire fire of a game. The Canada goaltender really did a great job in the second period, holding the U.S. off the board, and that really kind of, things really turned there. He made some pretty key saves. A U.S. player that I kind of was fun to watch to me was Lane Hudson. We talked a lot about him leading into the draft. You're a very undersized defenseman, but incredibly skilled. He looked like a lot of fun. So I think he's with Montreal.
Yeah.
Boy,
he's got some Jordan Spence to him, right? That's kind of the player that he reminds me of.
Yeah, the Montreal had a pretty good day today in terms of prospects performing well. So no, all in all, it was a frustrating game from a U.S. standpoint, but certainly a fun game. And it's another, Canada's going to be on their way to probably winning another one. Connor Bedard's been on a whole other level. I guess, Randon, I don't know maybe what you guys think of. You talked about Connors there, Russ. What about the other one in this game, Brandt Clark, who also picked up a goal? Thoughts on him in this tournament?
You want to go with me? I'll go first. It's just so for me, watching this tournament, I'm going to be really frustrated watching Brandt Clark develop for the first few seasons. He's so talented offensively. He's an offensively gifted player. There's no denying that. I thought in this tournament, at times he was a little too aggressive for my liking. And I think it kind of hurt his team at times. And his defensive decisions in the defensive zone, you saw a lot of Sean Dursey at some points. It's just kind of like you wanted to see a little bit more, but he got the goal today. He was really involved offensively, which is what you want to see from Clark, because that defensive game will come. So I don't think that I don't think that Clark's not going to be an incredible top 4 defensive player, or even a top pair defensive player in the NHL, which I still think he can be. But I saw a lot of, I guess, parts of his game where I can see the development still needs to be there a little bit. And another thing too is the stick tapping for the passes. Like, can we stop that? Like, he does it way too much. I think Justin Williams tweeted about it even. I don't know if he was specifically calling out Clark, but he even called it beaver tailing, which I've never heard that term, but now I'm going to use it all the time. So he's like, can we stop the beaver tailing? Which is, I love that. So it's just like, I love his want for the puck and to be involved in the play. But like, if I'm on the ice and I'm one of his teammates and I constantly hear a player, a line mate, tapping his stick for the puck, my first thought is like, okay, I'm not going to give you the puck if you keep doing that. But I don't know. There's just, I love his aggressiveness at times, but he just needs to do it in the right spots. And he's still a young player, and he'll learn how to do that. But it's just been kind of an up and down tournament for him so far. But the goal, I guess, was good to see if you're a Canada fan and Kings fan. But back in my mind, I still wanted US to win. So a little bittersweet, but it was still good to see Clark score there.
Yeah, I like. I mean, with Clark, I like the aggressiveness. I like the cockiness. I didn't watch the game, so I don't know the ferocity of the stick taps or whatever. I watched a little bit of the highlights and everything like that when I could. But I mean, I'm not mad when Kaliev is clapping his stick on the ice and then he fires a one-timer in and scores a goal. Like, I'm not too mad about it. I mean, maybe hockey players, maybe Joe can attest to something different, who has played the game and has coached the game, to how that would look differently. But to me, I just think it's a guy, maybe he is pressing too much, but I think it seems a guy that wants to prove himself and that came into this tournament to prove himself that he is the best defenseman. And so maybe that goes into a little bit of that, which I'm fine with a kid wanting to rise to the occasion on the biggest stage that he's ever played and perform. So
I got the sense. Sorry, go ahead, Rand.
To me, so like that's kind of where I put it as. Is it annoying? Is it something that is maybe too much for people who have played the game? You guys can go in the chat if you guys have played hockey and see if you have a problem with it. But I'd be interested to see what Joe says on, is that like a big thing in hockey, like beaver tailing, to where it's annoying? Is it a beer league thing? Is it just kind of?
It can be a beer league thing at times. I would say it's. You don't see it as frequently as he does it. We'll put it to you that way. Like, it happens. Like, guys tap their sticks and stuff like that. Like, that happens. But usually, you kind of just you have a, like, I used to I tell my guys on my team, use your words. You speak. Communicate out on the ice. Don't just tap your stick. So I could see that. I would say, though, I agree with you, Randon, that it's a lot more of like, he seemed to try to play every game and shift with like a chip on his shoulder, that he was out there to prove something. And I think it comes down to what your expectations were. Like, we've talked about this. I never liked the idea of him playing in this tournament. I felt he has a no-win situation for him. If he doesn't dominate or doesn't do everything like he should be, because he's a top prospect and has played in the NHL, then he's going to get a little bit of criticism. And I saw a player that I exactly expected to see. He was his instincts were incredible in the offensive zone and going forward and joining the rush. He has some flaws, as we've seen and talked about, going backwards with pace coming at him at times in the defensive zone with his footwork, none of which worries me long term. I think he's going to be okay there. And I just love, there's no hesitation. When I saw the replay again of his goal, I was like, why is he even there? It's just, but his instincts say, you know what? I'm going into the slot, and not a lot of defensemen have that. And I just love it. I think he's playing a modern day defenseman type of game. I'm going to say something that's going to get me roasted, but like, I watched a lot of early career, and he's still early career, but like the first few years of Rasmus Dahlin were a struggle. Okay. Like, talk about errors, like catastrophic errors, giveaways on the power play, leading to shorthanded goals and shorthanded breakaways, to the point where, Sabres fans and media were like, he's got to get off the power play. He's got to be, do we send him to the AHL? Like, Now, the difference between the two is Rasmus Dahlin is a much smoother skater than Brandt Clark, but I just see the instincts and the way he handles the puck kind of as he's skating backwards, and he's able to make those passes kind of off balance. The way he jumps into the play, he is a bit of a riverboat gambler. He's going to make those risky mistakes, but I just see some similarities there, but I absolutely love it. Again, I'm not going overboard. There's flaws in his game that we knew, but we knew those going in. So like nothing in this tournament surprised me. So I think he had a fine tournament. I thought he was good. I still think he should be. I think he's an NHL caliber defenseman. We've berated that point. I think we understand that until something changes, he's probably not going to be an NHL defenseman this year. So that is what it is. But he's capable. I think the Kings fans should be excited about his progression right now.
I thought Randon said it best, where it almost looked like he was trying to prove himself every time he was out there. He was trying almost too hard, and I felt like he got himself involved in plays maybe he shouldn't have. I don't know. It's just I love that aggressiveness, but maybe that chip on his shoulder was evident almost every time he stepped on the ice.
I will say this though. So the head coach Dennis Williams, and I met him briefly because one of my good friends played for him in Newman College, Division III down in Pennsylvania. And I haven't followed his career since. I know he went to Alabama Huntsville, I think it was after, and then he's bounced around a bit since. So I don't know that like I said, I don't follow him after, but he took that team and led them to one of the worst teams in Division III hockey to a national championship in Division III. I don't think he was the coach at the time, but he left it and they ended up winning the title. Anyways, he was a coach that at that time had no qualms about winning a 6-5 game. He loves get up and go. He loves the offense. He loves the attacking players. So you watch, I don't recall the time Brandt Clark, despite any mistakes he made, was ever benched. Mm-hmm. He went right back out there because Dennis Williams, that's the style I imagine he wants his guys to play. And he understands what Brandt Clark is. He's going to make his mistakes, but boy, is he going to be somebody that is going to be instrumental in the offensive zone. I saw one of the games where I was watching his shifts. He was out there for a solid minute at the end of the second period. Then the opponent, I can't remember which game it was now, they iced it. And so there was another minute and a half or so left. He kept Clark on the ice. He had probably a 2.5+ minute shift. And again, that's a coach just saying, go play. You're an offense. We have an offensive zone faceoff. Go do it. So I think that's another kind of clue too, is the coach really you didn't see many changes. He was still being trotted out there. So I really liked this game, and it sucks that again he's probably going to end up in Ontario, or the Ontario Hockey League. But I guess we'll see how things play out here over the next couple of weeks.
Carter comes out here and says, "Get out of here, Russ. No Clark slander will be allowed." So Russ is going to leave us for the rest of the pod. Carter Scores also comes in and says, "Hey, Clark was physical, block shots, was great. He's playing differently than he was in the World Junior than he did with the Kings, playing loose. He's been solid in the D zone. I liked him out there on 1-on-1s and 2-on-1s defending. I think that what is that, coach? They were who they thought they were, right? Or like Clark
Dennis
is
Green?
the player. Yeah,
Dennis Green, Arizona Cardinals.
Brandt Clark is the player that we thought, right? Like he is going to be an offensive juggernaut. He's going to be an okay skater, and a moderate defender in the National Hockey League, and he's only going to build on his strengths and level out his weaknesses as a player. Now, very rarely, I always had a coach say that, "Hey, why are you working on your weaknesses when you can make your strengths elite?" I think his strengths are already elite, and so he does need to work on the skating and some of the defensive stuff. But like, I'm not disappointed by anything in what he did today. And Carter said, he blocked, like I said, blocked shots, was great today. I also do agree with CJ here that Red Savage is the best name in the World Juniors by far. Now, Carter Scores comes in here as well, says, "Do you think the Kings should be scouting some of these or should be scouting some of these World Junior goalies?" I think they are. I think they wouldn't be doing their due diligence if they aren't. But a little tidbit here, the USA goalie, even though he got roasted for 6 today, Trey Augustine is getting a second and third round grade for this draft. He is age 17 out of Michigan. He's 6'1", 179. He's rated anywhere between 30 to 54 or so in the draft. So early second round, or I guess late first round, all the way through the third. But just some of his USA stats here. in 14 starts for the U18 team this year. He has a 210 GAA, 930 save percentage. And in the juniors for the USHL games where they play other opponents in there, he started 6 games, 1.92 GAA and 947 save percentage. And in the 5 World Junior games, including this one where they lost, 217 and a 915 save percentage. And he is slotted to go to Michigan State next season. So would be a name to look out for, Trey Augustine. He's second to third round grade. The Kings could try to poke high up and say, hey, we're deep everywhere else in the prospect pool. Let's try to throw another stab at goalie. So somebody definitely to watch out there for Kings fans when the draft season comes around, where we'll be picking and where he's kind of falling to is one name I picked out there for you, Carter. And during draft season, we'll come up with a lot more because I know that'll be a hot topic for Kings fans, goalie prospects to look at. So let's get it moving on here. Speaking of stick taps, congratulatory stick taps for Edler, 1,000 games. He is the thumbnail for tonight's episode. Great for him. Obviously, long storied career with the Canucks. Comes over here, veteran leadership. You were there at the game there, Russ? I mean, what did you think of the moment?
I thought it was great. I mean, the Kings do a pretty good job with these ceremonies. It was too bad it wasn't televised, but yeah, I mean, Alex Edler. It's good to see Edler make this milestone because I thought they explained it pretty well. Also, side note, Drew Doughty, his outfit in the video was epic. I don't know if you can find the picture, but he looked like he was ready to star on the neck, straight out of Compton too. It was hilarious. But yeah, Edler, this milestone. It kind of epitomizes what he brings to the ice. He's just always available. He's just that guy, that defenseman who you know what you're going to get out of him every night, and he's been that way even toward the sunset of his career. I mean, he's been a really solid signing, and even thinking about this year, he's coming in at the veteran minimum, and he's one of the more important pieces on the left side for the Kings right now. So I thought the Kings did a really good job. And one of the really cool parts about the ceremony was the painting that they gifted Edler. The team did. It was in the shape of the Swedish flag, so it had vintage wooden sticks make out kind of the cross. That's the yellow cross on the flag. And engraved on the sticks was the names of the 16 other Swedish Hockey Hall of Famers. So I thought that was a really cool touch.
Nice,
so
nice.
they did a really good job with it.
Yeah, that is really cool. He's had a heck of a career. He was so good for so long in Vancouver, and as you mentioned, Russ, even here these last couple of years in Los Angeles, he's been a pretty important and stabilizing piece to the bottom pair of the back end of this of the blue line. So at a good price too. He's come in and done a nice job for LA, and a hell of a career he's had. And again, like I said, he was great watching in Vancouver.
Yeah, just I really don't have much to add to that. I mean, just he's great, and we're going to need him down the stretch in the playoffs to make a run. So, congrats again, Edler there, and congrats to people who made some good bets on DraftKings, and that's our sponsor tonight. So, DraftKings hockey fans, light the lamp this winter with DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NHL. New customers can bet just $5 pregame money line on any NHL team to win their game and get $150 in free bets if they do. If that wasn't enough excitement, you can turn small bets into even bigger payouts with same-game parlays. Combine multiple bets like which team will win, how many goals will be scored, and more for your shot at even bigger payout. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code THPN. Bet $5 on any NHL team to win their game and $150 in free bets if they do. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook, code THPN. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions may apply. See show notes for details.
One thing I'll add to the goaltending you mentioned there, Russ, Thomas Milik, the goaltender for Canada, undrafted.
Yep.
He could, maybe he gets picked this upcoming year. He's somebody that's not, wasn't picked during his draft year. So it's, again, these things happen.
I got a lot of messages too about the Slovakia goalie after the Canada game. I think he had like 50 saves or so, and I can't recall the name, but he looks really good, and I believe he's undrafted as well. So yeah, this is a tournament where you get to hear some of these names that kind of come out of nowhere. But I mean, Joe, like we talked about it, it's goalies, right?
Goalies.
It's goalies. That's all you can say.
He'll win a Vezina one day.
It's goalies. It's just goalies.
Goalies.
So trade rumors, everybody's favorite segment here for the last couple of years with our team down south. But multiple articles have been written, regarding top trade deadline acquisitions, just for the whole league in general. And Chikrin was number 2 on the list. Stated that that his asking price has not gone down, and the GM said, "Hey, we've looked at comparables in recent years about and overall in the NHL on which." Players and what this guy went for with, and yada, yada, yada. And we're not going to back off because we know what we have. Yeah, Chikrin wants to play for a contender. And so ultimately he probably will be out of here, but we're not going to lower our price just because we feel like we need to trade him. So seems either posturing where he, as a GM, where he's saying, hey, this is what he's worth and this is what we're going to get. Or, we'll see if he lightens on that at the deadline when it really matters. But that's what he's saying right now. I mean, 2 first-rounders and maybe some accoutrement on top of that. That's been the price for about a year now. Too steep enough. I mean, he's been playing pretty good this season so far and putting to bed a lot of maybe one-year wonder type asking.
Yeah, he's certainly doing his part, right? Since he's returned from injury, he's played very well. And I know, and listened to 32 Thoughts, Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick said that the Kings are not only very interested, if not the favorites in this. The issue is those the 2 first-round pieces. I think everybody can assume that a first-round pick is going to go in this. What is that first-round piece? What is that player prospect, if you will? And one thing I've been thinking about, and I'd be curious your guys' opinion, is we talk as if, we assume, I guess you could say, as much of the word untouchable exists, that Quinton Byfield and Brandt Clarke are quote unquote untouchable. I wonder if you don't include them, do the Kings have the quality of prospect to get this deal done? Because, I'd have to go back, but I remember when I had Martin Chromiak in my summer article as the kind of main prospect, who was, I think, Chromiak and Turcotte or something was in the deal. And that didn't get received very well, but I would imagine a lot of folks would sign up for that right now. But I don't know if Arizona would. Again, the first round pick, okay, but what is the centerpiece prospect if it's not Byfield or Clarke? And that's why I'm wondering, does this deal get done for Los Angeles? Because I don't know that they have that big prospect piece. They have depth of prospect, but do they have that piece if they're not willing to include a Byfield Clarke in this deal?
For me, the untouchables right now are Byfield and Kaliyev.
I actually had assumed, yeah, you know what? I mean, I just assumed Kaliyev, but I guess I should have mentioned him too. Yeah, I'm with you there.
Clarke, if they had visited this trade maybe the year before this season or in the off season, and Clarke's name was involved, I'd consider it. I mean, it all depends on Chikrin's term, right? Because I believe he's only got 2 years left. So now to ask for the pieces that they're asking for, you only have a player for 2 years. This is like you're an extended rental at that point. I'm not trading a Clarke or Byfield, or I know The Athletic had an article that came out that said, we want to see Byfield traded for Velmelka and Chikrin. I'm like, okay, relax here. Let's not go overboard. But I mean, Chikrin is a great player and he's going to require a steep price. But yeah, I think, like you said, Joe, if the Kings aren't willing to trade Clarke, Byfield, or Kaliyev, Alex Turcotte and a first rounder probably won't get it done.
Does Jordan Spence?
Yeah, Jordan. Maybe you add Jordan Spence to that. That's a little bit better. But even then, I don't even know if the Kings would want to do that. That's quite a haul to send over just for one player that's only signed for 2 more years.
I would say Spence instead of Turcotte.
Instead of Turcotte, yeah. But even and that
Spence is the centerpiece of the prospect, if you will.
I mean, personally, I think that's a great trade. If I'm Arizona and I get Spence, a first round pick, and maybe another middle prospect like the Kings have, I don't know, just Pinelli, Madden, I don't know, just another middling prospect that they can get. I think that's a pretty good trade for Arizona to get. And I listened to that 32 Thoughts podcast, their last one that came out. They talked about how first round picks are going to be a huge commodity come trade deadline. And they even talked about Joel Edmondson possibly getting a first round pick. So I'm like, man, if a player like that is going to be required to, or if you're going to have to give over a first round pick for a player like that, man, it's going to be a wild trade deadline, or this Chikrin trade is going to be pretty interesting to watch, see what happens from other teams.
I think first round picks will be higher value than they were last year because this draft is supposed to be our friend of the pod, Scott Wheeler, came out with an article that this might be the biggest draft since 2005, and where he has essentially based on the last 5 years, he has top 10 grades on about 20 guys, right? So on 20-25 guys. So, and that the top 3 to 4 players would be, you could argue, be number 1 in any of the drafts in the last 3 seasons. So, I think it's something along the lines where maybe that first round pick, especially if it's going to be in the 20s for the Kings, is going to be easier to release because then you're not getting maybe an elite guy that you would be getting, or a high value guy like 15 or 14, like where the Kings right now, I mean, if we were talking about this a couple of weeks ago when the sky was falling, maybe it's like, hey, let's hold on to that pick because we might be 14, 15. We might have a chance of the lottery. We might be getting a really top guy here. Well, now if we're, first or second seed in the Pacific, we're probably going to be more 20 to 25. The Coyotes have 1 first round pick and they have 1 second round pick. They have 4 thirds. So, I mean, you're looking at does like a first, or does Turcotte and a second work out, or is it first and Spence and then maybe, another like a middle round prospect that we've drafted in years past, get it done because the first round pick's going to hold so much more weight, because then Coyotes get another stab because then maybe they can move their early second and our first to move back up into the top 15 and get another one of those elite guys. So it gives them more movement being a first round pick. And so, I am always a fan of consistently replenishing with the first round picks. You have Nav coming here with Durzi and Kupari, but does that really move the needle enough? You are getting 2 NHL guys that are still young as well as a first, and maybe that helps move along the rebuild for Arizona. It'll be interesting to see how much they back off. And I think the reason for this is not only trade rumors for the Athletic coming out of Chikrin as the number 2 guy, but the other thing where you said Vejmelka and Chikrin for Byfield and pieces, and you automatically and Cal Peterson, and then some salary retained. And obviously there's lots of people in Kingdom that want Vejmelka real bad. And I get it, having a great season, doing all this kind of stuff like that. We've talked about what the strategy will be in the offseason for the Kings. And I think that trade right now helps the team. I will give that trade that it helps the team this year more than it would any other year, because Byfield is still not blossomed into anything yet. Chikrin is an established lefty, and Vejmelka is better than any goalie we have. And it would make our run this year a lot more, favorable to go farther in the tournament. And if Vejmelka plays and the continued plays how he is, and Chikrin is that guy, do we have a team to make a run and with some puck luck potentially play for a cup? You could probably say yes or no on that one. I guess those are the only 2 options, to be honest. But I mean, I think you could say, yeah, you could sway me either way, right? Like you could say, hey, Fiala's a point per game player, yada, 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 and present your case. But down the line, I think where you say no to the trade and you take the gamble on maybe signing a UFA and that Copley can be the guy for you a little bit this year is, do I think the Kings are ready for a cup? Not really. If they get Chikrin and Vejmelka, are they? It's probably a lot more. If they just get Chikrin with Copley, where do they stand? I think there's a lot of moving parts there. But where it doesn't do it for me is Father Time is generally undefeated, and Kopitar eventually is going to drop off. And Deneau is not a number 1C by traditional standards of offensive output, where your player that is going to go in said spot you drafted to be there is Byfield. And if you trade him away, where does that heir apparent come from? Is it free agency in 2024 by Austin Matthews? Do they say, who cares? Let's try to win this year. We'll figure it out in the future. Byfield, thank you for these 2 great players. I don't really know where they go with that. And that's a lot of back and forth. And I don't necessarily say anybody is untouchable. Maybe for a certain player there are. But, I mean, if certain players like Austin Matthews were to become available because Toronto doesn't think they can win, which is not the case because they're in it, but said player, or what if Edmonton isn't going to make the playoffs? Do they dangle Draisaitl and blow it up, or put name player here? But I don't think anybody's untouchable, so to speak. And it just on the right package. Would you do Byfield for Vejmelka and Chychrun straight up?
I wouldn't. I get it, but I wouldn't. And here's the thing too. The one thing that I've been thinking about is the Kings, even with that trade, I don't think are cup contenders, and they're certainly not right now. But we have to consider them Western Conference contenders, do we not? I don't know. I mean, maybe them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the Western Conference is not good, guys. Like, nobody is jumping ahead of the pack. Dallas is not as good, I don't think, as where their start has been. Colorado's banged up, and of course, if and when they get healthy, they're going to be really dangerous. Vegas, as long as they're healthy, is dangerous. I think Russ knows I'm still a big believer in Calgary. They're starting to turn things around, but there's still, like, none of these teams are like running away with anything or as good as any teams in the Eastern Conference when you look at what's going on over there. So perhaps the Kings make an argument and say, you know what, we could try to take advantage of a maybe a little underwhelming Western Conference. And look at the way the Kings have started. I mean, the ups and downs of this. Todd McClellan was fired 2 weeks ago, and the Kings are second place in the West. So, like, I maybe that's how they look at this too. Is that, you know what? Hey, let's see if we can take a shot. And once you get there, you never know, I suppose. But I'd say no to that trade. I'd still try to do this deal, a Chychrun deal, just a Chychrun deal with pick prospects not named Byfield and Clark, or Kaliev. I guess I don't really consider a prospect anymore, but for sake of discussion. And again, remember, the cap still matters, and there's going to have to be some sort of money probably going the other way. I don't know. I know as you get closer to the deadline, though, some things open up. So I'm not sure exactly how that'll work, but it's a weak Western Conference right now. Like, it's a vulnerable Western Conference. How's that? That the Kings are right there. I will say, though, it's a little weird because their possession numbers are fine. They're not great, but they're definitely above average to good. They are the only team in the playoffs right now with a negative goal differential, which, generally speaking, that does not bode well for a team. When you have a negative goal differential, you're not generally going to make the playoffs. But their possession metrics are not bad, and they're actually now getting saves. Like, so much of that came from at the start of the season when they couldn't keep the puck out of their net. Well, now they're getting some saves, so I do think it is trending in the right direction. But you still hope that that's not something that that obviously can't continue if they have intentions of making the playoffs.
I'm not.
I think this is a good point. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just going to say I'm not trading Byfield or Clark or Kaliev for Chychrun right now. If you can make that Chychrun trade without giving up any of those pieces, then do it. Yeah,
yep,
100% do it. Because, like Joe said, like, you guys, I mean, the Kings could be a cup contender, and maybe are a cup contender. That's what's so weird is, like, you said it best. The Western Conference is not great. If Colorado eventually gets healthy, they should be the cream of the crop. Like, obviously, they have the players for it. They'll be there. Vegas, they're an injury away too. Like, I mean, they're and the Kings have shown the capability to play up with them. The Kings just beat Dallas. Right behind them is the Winnipeg Jets. The Jets don't really scream like championship team. So if you can get through we've seen the Kings do this before, right? In 2012, where they just kind of make a run and win a Stanley Cup. And if they can make that run through the Western Conference, I mean, not a lot of those teams scare you. Who knows what happens in the Stanley Cup final, but that's obviously still a ways away. Does Chychrun push you over the hump? I think they probably can. So if you can make that deal without giving up those pieces for Chychrun, this team could be a Stanley Cup contender and should be among those teams like we talked about, like a Golden Knights or a Colorado Avalanche in the Western Conference.
Higuini comes in here and says, he's very high on guys like Laferriere. You still got your second round pick last year in Hughes, Simon Tybalt, who's had some very good World Junior appearances and has increased his stock from a third round pick that he was. Chromiak, I still think, has some shine on. Pinelli's on pace for 50 goals. There's plenty of prospects out there to where if you did a first and maybe Spence and one of those other prospects, you still have a good chance of getting of Chychrun down the line. And Chychrun, I don't think is going to be a rental. He is 24 years old, and I think it's going to be along the same lines. Rob Blake seems to do his due diligence to where he asked Fiala if he was going to sign here long term, and kind of are able to talk to the agents about like what is his view on LA. Like, would he sign here long term? Does he like where the organization is going? What kind of money do you think he's going to be wanting? All this kind of stuff like that, to where Rob Blake is going to not make a move like that based on what he says, unless he goes New Year's resolution Rob Blake, according and is just super aggressive gunslinger, like Russell wants him to be. But I think if the Kings are first or second in the Pacific at the trade deadline and the team is humming, you have to be a little aggressive. And if that means giving up, not necessarily a Byfield or whatever, I think I'm in agreement with you guys there. But if they have to give up an extra prospect or two that are second to fourth round picks to sweeten the pot, we're having prospects that we haven't even named in like 6 months of podcasts that are still third or fourth round picks that have been playing well, right? So, there's plenty of guys out there that you could throw in and add and do those kind of things, or second round picks like Akil Thomas. One of Joe's favorite guys, but multiple injuries. Does Arizona see enough shine in him, even with the injuries, for it to move the needle? There's lots of different options there. And I think that if they are in that room, I like Chychrun more than anybody else just because of the age and the salary. I think it's not only a win now move, but it's a win for the future move. And he fits right in with that young core of guys that could be the next group that goes through. So, yeah, I'd like them to be a little bit aggressive, just not that aggressive where we're trading Byfield, the heir apparent, because of reasons I said earlier. So, let's get into the Kings as far as in general. The Dallas game this past week. Kind of go over some. We watched the game live, so all of you that showed up to that, Kings beat Colorado 5-4. They ended up losing on Saturday on New Year's Eve 4-2. They probably went out and party that night because they came back right and fresh to beat Dallas 3-2 on the 3rd, starting off the new year right. What did you guys see out of these 3 games? I know we watched the Colorado game live, so maybe let's see more along the lines of Dallas. But what did you guys see from the Kings there?
Well, the Philly game, as much as I hate to say it, I'm just going to throw that one away. It sucks because it's such a frustrating game because it's a team that obviously they probably should have beat. But, if we had done this pod probably right after that, I'd probably be a little bit more, I guess, angry. But the fact that they were able to bounce back and beat a team like Dallas and play really well against Dallas too, it wasn't a fluke. This was actually a really good hockey game for both sides. And to keep up with Dallas, a team that's on top of the Western Conference, and to beat them 3-2 in a really solid hockey game, well played hockey game. You had Byfield playing well. There's a lot to like from a Kings point of view. That's really good to see, and it gives you high hopes for the team going forward in the future.
Yeah, I thought the Philly game. They controlled the game. That's one of those ones where, remember that I was so angry about the Arizona game, and I was angry about the Columbus game because, they didn't play well, and I'm that's frustrating to me when they play well against. They don't play well against bad teams, and they played well against Philly. They dominated the game across the board, and they just, they gave up at least one power play goal and maybe a shorty actually too. That one,
yep.
So. Jonathan Quick wasn't very good, guys.
No, he wasn't.
So
I guess that's the elephant in the room, right?
Elephant, yeah, it is the elephant in the room. He wasn't very good. Let's just call a spade a spade.
Yeah, you're right. Power play in the first from Scott Lawton and Noah Cates with the shorthanded.
Yeah, and a lot of off-angle goals where he was caught down. Just tough one. But as Russ said, they bounced back nicely against Dallas, and what you said was just a good hockey game, with 2 teams that happen to be 2 of the top teams in the Western Conference at the moment. So I thought it was a good game, and it's a big win for LA to, they're beating some good teams. They're losing to the bad teams, but beating good teams, which is a little bizarre. And they're going to get another tough test tomorrow against or tonight when you listen to this, if on podcast, but against the Boston Bruins. So we'll see. That's another big one, and it's a different one because this is an Eastern Conference team, so it's like a legit good team, not like one of these Western Conference ones where this is a year where it's down. So it's not quite the same, but it's going to be another good test for them.
Yeah, I think that you're looking at the games here, and it's kind of interesting when teams do this, and it's like where they're playing down to their opponent. And then they're rising up for big games where they're able to score there, and I just think it's interesting. And obviously, the Kings are going to be playing better opponents in the playoffs, so maybe they'll rise up for all the games. But you want to see if they're going to start putting some distance in between them to really make us believe at the trade deadline that it's time to kind of push in some chips. They're going to have to beat these weak teams. They're going to have to show that they can dominate against the Phillies and the Arizona and et cetera, to make me feel better about an all-in move. Or maybe that's the reason why you make an all-in move. I don't know. But I think you're looking at something along the lines of a team that is really maybe in the last month starting to find a little bit more of a defensive identity, and starting to move forward here. And so maybe that will start to level itself out to where they'll play better against these teams, even though the Philly and Arizona and Blue Jacket game were recent. But I think that's kind of been a prevalent all year that they've been playing down to opponents. But then they took care of the Anaheim Ducks. So I don't know. I mean, you really can't have it down the stretch. Like those are 2 points that you slot in when you're thinking about playoff time, and you're like, okay, well, we need this many points. You're almost guaranteed, on points watched last season, I was like, okay, we're playing Seattle. That's 2 points. And then when we didn't get those 2 points, I'm like, okay, well, now we need this, and those all end up mattering when it comes to seeding down the stretch. And, those weak teams you should be able to put away. I mean, it's not like Arizona's never going to win games. Right? It's going to happen, but you got to put away those teams more often than not.
And God, I hate to pile on here, and I know it's not all his fault, but those 3 games, Columbus, Philly, and Arizona, all had the same netminder.
If we can lose, actually, what's funny is I actually wouldn't be upset if we just lost the rest of the games to the Ducks, because I don't want them to have the higher lottery seats. Just give them points. They could use it. They're beating Dallas right now 2-0 the first intermission.
Yeah, don't remind me, Russ.
Go Anaheim. We're all Ducks fans right now. That's right. I want to see them creep up into the standings a little bit.
I mean, any player, they're either going to get what? Leo Carlson, Fantilli, right? So, I mean, I think it's something along those lines of really pushing forward and seeing what those teams are going. And Boston will definitely be a good test. So, we had a late question. I know we just ended the trade rumors, but does any trade revolving Chychrun or said defenseman affect the goalie situation, or do you think because of the cap situation, we're bringing in a player that you're really just going to have to write Copley because of his salary?
Does it affect the goalie situation in terms of personnel?
Yeah.
Copley, okay. I would say no, it doesn't, unless you're actually acquiring a goalie, which I don't think the Kings will do. I mean, what does it do to the goaltending, like from a defensive zone standpoint? Like Chychrun's a big boy. He's long. He's got a reach. And I think people mistake him for being this solely like offensive defenseman who can't play D. That's not entirely true. He's pretty good in his defensive zone, and he brings a little bit of snarl. So I guess to that end, like it could make your goaltending in defensive zone a little bit better. But yeah, from a personnel standpoint, I don't think it affects the goaltending much.
Haven't we gone through this already? Remember when the Kings traded Peter Budaj for Ben Bishop? Like, let's just ride the hot hand. Just you're getting some decent goaltending with Copley.
Play him.
Maybe quick. Yeah, play him. Play him every game.
Play him.
Every game that's not a back-to-back,
Yep.
play him. And maybe Quick figures it out like he did last year. Quick wasn't that great at the beginning of the year and at parts of the year until he just figured it out toward the end of the year, and he was vintage Jonathan Quick toward the playoffs. So
Will ever get to a point if, say, hypothetical Cal Peterson plays lights out in Arntera and he deems worthy of a call-up, does Jonathan Quick ever get sent down the season? No matter how bad he plays?
No.
That's the weird part. It's going to be either Copley or Peterson, but yeah, that's going to be an interesting storyline to watch if Copley does eventually fall off, which we're all hoping it doesn't happen. We just ride this wave all the way to June, into the parade. But yeah, it's going to be either Copley or Peterson because Quick's not going anywhere.
So let's get into a little fun stuff. 41 games in, right? Mid-season awards here. I got some of this. I'm going to shout them out here. Kings News IG put together this graphic for me on Instagram. I thought it was kind of interesting. So let me kind of go over some things here. Leader in save percentage this year, obviously Copley. Last year was Quick. Leader in goals, Velarde. Last year was Kempe at this time, 18 goals. Velarde with 16. Fiala with points at 39. Last year was Kopitar at 36. We have 30 more penalty minutes this season. A little bit worse on the face-off dot. Both seasons have given up 6 shorthanded goals, but we've only scored 1, where last year we already had 5. We've given up more goals against by almost 26, but we've also scored about 25 or 15 more goals for 131-4. The penalty kill is worse this year than it was last year by a full percentage, but power play is up 7%. So to the tale of two tapes there, any of those numbers jump out to you guys before we give any individual awards, or kind of how the team compares halfway through the season versus last year?
Yeah, Copley leading the team in save percentage jumps out to me.
Exactly. Yeah, they're getting good goaltending, and hopefully the goals against will start to creep down a little bit.
Yeah, so I think the negative goal differential is the biggest thing. The power play, if the penalty kill is roughly the same and it's roughly garbage both seasons, and the power play continues to progress, and you're going to get guys like Kaliev, and they're going to be more more creative. I really like the fact when Kaliev was on that hot streak, they had 2 power play units that had 2 different identities, but were both equally effective, right? So I think if they can keep that going, and then, like we said, we get more saves, the tail of the tape is going to be different by the end of the season. I think the team can only go up from here. So I think it's very interesting to kind of see there. And I would have never predicted Copley. I didn't even want them to sign Copley. So I'm glad to be wrong on that aspect, the way the season's turned out. But let's get over to the season awards here. And we're going based off of not the NHL, but just the Kings season awards. So we got MVP, best newcomer, best defenseman, best defensive player. And then we're going to go unsung hero as well. So let's start it off with the unsung hero here. Let's work our way backwards. Joe, who's your unsung hero for the Kings this season?
This couldn't be easier for me. It's Blake Lizotte. I mean, he's among the top. He's one of the top primary point getters on the team. He is among the top producers in terms of shot assists on the team per 60. He's been really, really good this year. He's elevated his game when he's need to. He's got the third highest goals at 5-on-5 this year. That was Blake Lizotte on the team. Like, he's been really good defensively. He's been really good in the offensive zone. He's playing a 4th line role excellently, and even at times up in the 3rd line. This is an easy answer for me.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one. I think it's an easy answer for me as well. Blake Lizotte. I mean, each night it just seems like he's getting better and better, and it's crazy because you didn't really expect Blake Lizotte to be a player that's going to be getting 15 goals in the year, and that's what he's on pace for. So, I mean, he's centering a line with Gabe Velarde and Kevin Fiala, and they're looking really good, and it just seems like he's starting to make his line mates better too. So we used to talk about Lizotte as being just like this interchangeable 4th line center, just waiting for prospects to come up. But now I'm talking about maybe keeping Lizotte long term, because he's such a good player, and it's so good to see the progression of from where he started to what he's become now, and hopefully the Kings can keep him around and he doesn't go anywhere else. But yeah, he's definitely my unsung hero so far.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with an honorable mention there for Alex Iafallo, and I think the reason being is you look at Alex Iafallo. Has 14 points in 18 games, almost a point per game player this season. Was out for a long stretch. You saw how the defense kind of fell off a little bit without him there, to where we know what he's not. He's not a first-line winger, goal scorer type player. But the Kings seem to have 2 Swiss Army knives that have a little bit of variance to them, in Trevor Moore and Iafallo. And Iafallo has been moved around up and down the lineup. And I really think he's an unsung hero because he was in every single trade discussion in the offseason about the player to be moved for Cap, whether it be him or Walker, but he was in a lot of them because how are they going to make it work with Fiala and Kempe to get said player here or said person here? Well, I mean, I follow. We can trade him. He's expendable. And he's shown that he's been a player that has kind of flown under the radar about how much the team needs him and appreciates him in the middle six. And so I'm going to go I follow with mine.
I like it.
I like the pick. Yeah, I like it.
Let's move it up here to best defensive. Let's do best defenseman. So best defenseman, whether you want to go offensive, defensive, and why. We'll flip it to Russ on the first one.
Best defenseman, I'm going to go with Drew Doughty. And might be, I don't know. It just seems like every night he's the guy who's going to be leading the team in ice time. He's not scoring a lot this year, but he's still helping out, still quarterbacking the first power play. He's the anchor on defense. If this team didn't have Doughty like they did last year, it'd be tough. I don't know. It's you almost look back at last year and you're like, wow, how did they overcome not having Doughty for the whole entire year? But now that we're seeing him be healthy, I think he's still the main reason why we're seeing a player like Mikey Anderson start to develop into the player that he is. So he's helping not only his game come along and be resurgent a little bit, but he's also helping Mikey develop into a really good top pair defenseman himself. So I think it's Drew Doughty for me.
We got Doughty we got one vote for Doughty there. We got a lot of Mikeys in the chat. Where are you going, Joe?
I am gonna go with Mikey Anderson, and just because of his defensive metrics. Like he's just a really solid defenseman. He's really good through the neutral zone. He's really good at controlling the zone entries against and defensive zone entries, I should say. And you've heard me talk about how I do question where is he an LD1 on a cup winning team like a Jacob Chikrin would be. Like I still question that because there's just not much there in terms of offensive contribution, but overall from a defensive standpoint, and really none of the other Kings defensemen, I would say, I agree with Russ that Doughty's had a fine season. It's just been down for him offensively, which is so much of what he brings to the game and to the Kings. So that's been tough to see. That I think Mikey's probably been kind of quietly the best defenseman. I think you could probably say the only defenseman that we haven't really heard much about is Mikey Anderson or maybe Matt Roy. Like everybody else has had their moments where people's kind of been on them for various reasons, right or wrong. But I'm going to go Mikey Anderson on this one.
I'm going for his 9-game stint. I'm going Brant Clark for best defenseman of or whatever defenseman it gets moved out of the way for Brant Clark can have best defenseman of the year. No, I'm just kidding there. I think Doughty's an interesting one there because I look at his stats and 2.7% shot percentage, right? So he's chucking up a lot of shots, not seeing him go in, not getting the puck luck, which, traditionally from a defensive standpoint, when you're shooting from the point a lot, you need some of that luck. You need some puck to go off a stick here, a body here, squeak through a pad, and he's not really getting it. So we'll see if that kind of ends up, moving on. I know I want to give honorable mention to the only other defenseman that is really there, and he's picked up a lot of slack on the power play too, and the reason the power play numbers are probably where they're at is Jersey. I know he gets a lot of crap for his defensive play, but I mean, he's right there with offensive stats with Drew Doughty. He's one of the main reasons why the power play unit for the second unit is effective as it is. And he's able to find and utilize his angles on the point all the way from, side to side and able to find Kaliev a lot of the times there or set somebody up to find Kaliev. So I kind of want to give him a little bit of, stick taps there, with Sean Dursey. But I think the Kings are not the Kings without Drew Doughty still in this late in his career. And I think he's the best defenseman right there.
Can I just do one quick offensive defenseman? This player leads Kings defenseman in 5-on-5 primary assists. He leads Kings defenseman, tied for the lead with Kings defenseman in primary points. And he leads Kings defenseman in shot contributions per 60. Who am I talking about?
Is it Edler?
It is not Alex Edler.
If you say Sean Walker, this podcast ends.
It is Sean Walker.
I
just do the
I
numbers.
knew it was off the board. Knew it was off the board.
5 primary points, 3 primary assists. That leads the Kings among defensemen at 5-on-5, and he's He's contributing the most shot contributions for those that have played at least 9 games, because the three that have played the fewest games are ahead of him in the per 60. So he's and Russ, you said it last pod or the live show, like he's not played that bad.
Nope.
Been
good. Been good. Deserves the praise.
I like, he's just the patsy. And it's like hearing that stat is like drinking a day old beer. Like you just opened it, you left it out on the counter, it's all stale. Like, I guess it's still beer at that point, but it's not what you intend it to be. And I don't know. I don't like that.
For the record, I agree with the Jersey because of his power play contributions that he is, he's been a big.
We haven't really heard that. Jersey has done another thing lately. So he's been pretty good on the left side as of late. So maybe he's starting to figure it out there too.
Hashtag not my Walker. You guys crack me up in the chat. You guys crack me up. All right. So best defensive player, moving on here. I'll start with this one, maybe. And it's the gimme right here. And you guys go into the deep stats, but I think I'm going to take the gimme on this one. The little short putt, and it's the no. He's the best defensive player. He's the one that's asked to do the most defensively in the greatest position at center. He's often asked to take faceoffs against the number one guys. He's often asked to lock down their best player. And so maybe the metrics aren't there, but sometimes the metrics don't need to be there when you're asked to do something at a higher level on a consistent basis. And that's kind of why I'm picking Dano there.
I'm going to go, I don't know if this is maybe bending the rules a little bit, but I'm going to go Phoenix Copley as my best defensive player because
he plays defense.
Right now, he is their defense pretty much. He's the reason that the defense is playing better, and he's the reason the goaltending has been what it was lately, as of late. So, the turnaround has been pretty much because of him. So, he could be the MVP by the time the season's over, even though he's only played 10 games. But, yeah, it's been the turnarounds all started with Copley and then, and he's the main reason for this little stretch we're on right now.
I think this player gets a little – I don't want to say gets overlooked for his defensive contributions because it's not as if he's a big offensive contributor, but he's such a really good, well-rounded player. I'm actually going to go with Phil Dano's line mate, Trevor Moore. I think he's been really good in all 3 zones this year. He just got the extension. I think he's just been – I'm a big fan of his. We talked about how his shot contributions are really good and how he wouldn't be surprised to see him pop off and maybe one of these years crack 60 points if all things go well with him. But I'm going to go Trevor Moore. I think he's kind of an underrated defensive player.
Nice. Yeah, I don't know if you remember, but he actually won Defensive Player last year.
I did not remember that, actually. Yeah. I did.
That was surprising. It was surprising to me because I didn't think he was the best defensive player. But yeah.
Okay, I honestly did not remember that.
All right, last one would be the MVP of the team. You can go points, you can go what they've meant most of the team, however you want to take this and spin it. Joe, where are you going to take the MVP for the Kings?
It's tough to ignore recency bias and not pick Phoenix Copley because of how well he's played. But no, I'm going to go. For me, it's Kevin Fiala. I just think he has injected something that this team has lacked for a long time. He's electric. He leads the team in points. He leads the team. I could go through the primary points, the 5-on-5, the shot contributions. He's just tops across the board. He's been an impact player. He's played up and down the lineup. Todd McClellan has used him, on the first line, obviously with Kopitar. He's used him on the third line to kind of jumpstart that line, and it's worked. I just think he's so good that I'm going to go with Kevin Fiala.
So for me, it's a toss-up because kind of with Carter's scores here in the chat, I really want to say Victor Arvidsson because I really think that, man, when Victor Arvidsson is going, it seems like the Kings are winning a lot of games. But Victor Arvidsson wouldn't be Victor Arvidsson if it wasn't for Phil Danault. And it just seems like any player that you place alongside to play with Danault, they're going to have incredible games. And he just elevates his line mates each night. Doesn't matter who's there. And yeah, he, like you mentioned, Brandon, he's one of the better defensive players on the team, but he's still contributing a little bit offensively. So, man, I just love everything about Phil. I think it's one of the best value contracts in the NHL. So I'm going to go with Phil Danault here.
I like it. And I guess maybe we should consult Carter Scores here, because I'm choosing Victor Arvidsson. And I think you just look at it. I mean, my original was Fiala, but I figured somebody would have taken it. So I'm going to go Arvidsson, and the reason being is I think that he's quietly third on the team. I mean, not so quietly, but he's third on the team in points. He probably would be second if he played the other 4 games and it was evenly matched with everybody there. He comes in and plays with tenacity. I think he's one of the only players in some of the games where we get very upset about the way that the heads hang low and all that kind of stuff like that. He seems to bring it every single game with 100% of his energy, no matter which line he's playing on in what situation. And I think he really brings up. And I think MVP, most valuable player, sometimes is based, for me, when I think about it, who would my valuable player be, is based off of expectation. And with bringing in Fiala and bringing in all these other guys, Victor Arvidsson kind of got a little, thrown under the rug a little bit with his injury and all that kind of stuff like that. And I just think really him coming back from an injury, really missing some time mid-season for his daughter there, and not missing a beat when he came back. I think that he's one of the players who drives the offense every single night, and the offense hasn't been humming this well ever since I've been watching the Kings play hockey, I don't think. So I think Victor Arvidsson is definitely one of the MVPs of this team for sure.
Absolutely.
I don't think there's really any reason to go into player of the week. Does anybody want to shout out an honorable mention for player of the week? Because we kind of just talked about every player on the team during the awards at some stint. Any shout outs there?
I need to shout out Sean Walker for his player of the week.
Hey, there we go.
We've all of us here, and
Yep.
maybe Kings fans all across the world have been so critical of Sean Walker, and he's always a name that gets brought up whenever we talk about Brandt Clarke or Jordan Spence. But if we're going to be so critical about him when he's playing bad, or when we think he shouldn't be in the lineup, we have to give him his praise when he's playing well. And lately, he's been playing well, so he deserves all the praise that he hasn't been given. So I think Kings fans should start to take notice of what they're seeing with Sean Walker, and he's been a big piece. I mean, that Edler-Walker pair is one of the better pairs for the Kings right now, if you look at some of the advanced metrics. So as much as maybe we want to see Brandt Clarke or Jordan Spence, some of these other players in the lineup, I think Sean Walker's starting to get a little bit more comfortable. And maybe that this first part of the season, coming back from that long injury absence, maybe he needed these games to get used to and up to speed. So I think he should get consideration for the player of the week this week.
Carter Scores comes in. Walker has been good this week. Arizona's going to love him. I think it's good. I mean, you gotta call a spade a spade, and when he's playing bad, he's playing bad. When he's playing good, he's playing good. I think it doesn't sit well on my tongue a little bit, but hey, heck of a snipe. That Walker goal was nasty. I mean, you got to give him props. There was a question here before we get going that I really want to think. Do you think it's recognition for the All-Star game? Sometimes when a team has a lot of players that are really close, they just give it to the captain and Kopitar. Do you think Fiala gets it in his first year as a King?
100%. Yes. Yeah. I don't think
so.
Yeah.
No, I'm glad we brought up the All-Star game, because they actually, Emily Kaplan, I think, came out with a report today that's saying that the All-Star votes are going to be through Twitter this year.
Oh,
so
boy.
I believe if you just do hashtag NHL All-Star, any name that you tag to that hashtag is going to get a vote. I don't know if they're going to filter this out to get rid of any John Scotts or anything like of that nature, but might be time to start.
A good idea.
Yeah, might be time to
NFL's
start
doing it.
Might be time to start the Blake Lizotte to the All-Star game trade.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's all I'm saying.
Talking about.
They did it for the NFL this year. You could vote on, and then they even count retweets. So if you see anybody with a All-Star game, they'll count retweets as well. So Twitter will be buzzing there. Shank Master comes in, start all the bots. Fire them up, boys. Well, thank you guys in the chat for coming in. Really appreciate you guys. You guys are, always make Hockey Royalty run here. Love you guys being so energetic in the chat. If you guys want to read our articles, they're at hockeyroyalty.com. Articles coming out daily. You can find us at hockey_royalty on Twitter. Find me at Rando Commando 24, NHL Russell, and JW Paterino. scrolling across the bottom. As always, thank you to our sponsor at DraftKings Sportsbook, code THPN. Man, we got some good games coming up, some quality wins against some quality opponents, but a big juggernaut tomorrow with Boston and going forward. Let's see the Kings keep on rolling, and maybe we get some New Year's resolution, Rob Blake, and we get to see an aggressive move come February. But thank you guys again. Thank you, boys, for talking some Kings talk with me, as always, on this podcast. Go Kings, go.